Let us briefly look at the effect environment had on hominid evolution. This chart comes from a study that investigated paleoclimate changes affecting East Africa and considered how these changes served as a catalyst for evolutionary change that drove key speciation events in the evolutionary history of hominids. The study demonstrated that the paleoclimate of East Africa was punctuated by episodes of short, alternating periods of extreme wetness and arid conditions, superimposed on a regime of subdued moisture availability, that together resulted in a long term drying trend. This drying trend may have been the cause for changes in the ecological landscape, from densely forested, tree covered ecological niches to open savannas. This change would have affected the food supply available and would have provided the context for bipedalism to become an advantageous trait, allowing early hominids to adapt to the changing landscape. By becoming bipedal, early hominids were able to travel longer distances and evolve other traits, making them more adaptable to continued changes in the environment, improving their ability for food acquisition and survival. As you can especially see with regard to changes in the soil carbonates in column F of the chart, showing the overall trend from a wet to dry environment in East Africa, there also appears to be corresponding changes observed in the fossil record with regard to the evolution of hominids. I provide a PDF of the journal article this chart comes from as an additional reading in this module. It is not required reading, but it provides additional details to how changes in climate influenced our evolutionary history. A key issue that is often discussed with regard to our evolutionary history is whether or not adaptive radiation played a role in our evolution. It has been commonly believed that our evolutionary history is not one that demonstrates a rapidly diversifying lineage. Therefore, adaptive radiation appears to not have had a significant role in our evolutionary development. Instead, many researchers have concluded that human evolution was a gradual process that took place slowly in time, where the changes occurred in a single lineage without branching, as found with other species. This is called anagenesis. Of course, this notion is based on the fossil record. The question arises, is our fossil record complete enough to make such a conclusion? In other words, is it more likely than not we have not discovered the full range of species that have evolved throughout hominid evolution? In fact, we are constantly discovering new species that belong to the genus Homo that are now extinct. We will look at some of these species a little later. Further, in a recent DNA study of West Africa, it has been determined that there is a ghost DNA from another group of ancient hominids, ancient humans, that we do not have any bones or ancient DNA to prove it exists. This would seem to suggest that maybe our evolutionary lineage does not look like a tree with a single branch, but more like a bush with several branches indicative of adaptive radiation. I will provide a link to the story of the ghost DNA from NPR in this module for your consideration. In addition, I'm also providing journal articles that discuss in more details adaptive radiation in human evolution in a week 5 module additional readings. These readings are not required readings, but are informative and being offered to further your understanding. As mentioned, environmental changes allowed for bipedalism to develop as a key evolutionary change in our evolutionary history. In fact, one can argue it is the most significant evolutionary change because it essentially allows for all the other advancements or changes that lead to who we are today. There is a general consensus that the earliest hominins were bipedal, the Australopithecines. By becoming bipedal, it changed our thermoregulatory system and freed our hands to do other things, such as use tools. These changes, for example, helped in the process of expanding our brain size over a long period of time. This map shows generally where early hominid fossils have been discovered. The majority, or should I say, the greatest concentration of fossils have been found in East Africa, in the present countries of Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Kenya. It is believed that our divergence into being bipedal occurred in this geographic region. As you can recall from the environmental study mentioned earlier with regard to the paleoenvironmental and climate changes of East Africa that have taken place over the last 5 million years, we can see how this region may be the home of our earliest evolutionary bipedal ancestors.